Welcome into another edition of Locked On Eagle Squad. A little bit of a smaller squad today. Just me and Harry. Hey,
Yeah.
Harry. How you
This
doing?
is like a split squad game in spring training, man. The other half of the team is somewhere else, and we're here together.
Yes, but nonetheless, we're here together, powering through. We'll talk about where our other squad members are coming up in a minute. This is Locked On. Well, as far as what we're going to talk about today, we got a couple of big respect coming in to the Philadelphia Eagles defense. We'll get into that in a second. This is Locked On Eagle Squad podcast.
Why Eagles Fly? It's the Eagles Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Philadelphia Eagles every week, covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the city of brotherly love, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Eagles Squad show starting now.
And welcome into Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. This particular episode is brought to you by the incredible people at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if it hits, how about this? You get $150 in bonus bets with FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com. Harry, so much to get into today. Like I was saying in the open, we got a lot of respect coming into the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Normally, I just say, I'm going to go ahead and leave well enough alone. But I need to know how, and I need to know why. And it is from Pro Football Focus. We'll get into that. We'll also get into the biggest threat to the Philadelphia Eagles because, in my opinion, Harry, when it comes to the NFC, it all comes down to the team that we're going to be talking about today in our 2024 season rewind. The team the Eagles faced in the divisional round of the playoffs, the LA Rams. We'll be talking about that throughout the show today. But let's just jump into this before we get into the biggest threat. When you talk about this Eagles defense, Harry, you obviously talk about the great year that was last year, top-ranked defense, going into that Super Bowl. They manhandled Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, the pick six, Cooper DeJean, the great year from Jalen Carter, Quentin Mitchell, all this stuff was fantastic. There's been a lot of turnover, Harry, since last year. You don't have Josh Sweat. Brandon Graham is retired. You're still trying to make up for the absence of a guy like Hassan Reddick. You don't have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Darius Slay is gone. All this is
Milton Williams.
Milton Williams no longer here. He goes to the Patriots on a huge Kajunga deal. Look, I love this defensive line. I love a guy like Zach Bond in his story last year. Pro Football Focus has ranked the Philadelphia Eagles linebacking group as the best linebacking group in the entire NFL, Harry. They have ranked their defensive line the second best defensive line in the entire NFL, Harry. I want this to be true. I can't see it right. Who are the Eagles? Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean's not healthy yet. Jahad Campbell's not healthy yet. How are the Eagles getting up to number one in terms of their linebacking core in the entire NFL?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if this is just PFF trolling Howie Roseman, in early July when there's not a whole heck of a lot else going on. But then I started to look at the list, Mark, and you see the Detroit Lions coming in at number 2, the Patriots actually vaulting up there, which kind of surprised me at number 3. But when I think of linebacking in the NFL, there's certain brands and teams that sort of come to mind. And I started to look for those teams. And you got to look way down the list for teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens, are teams that I always think of, have had great linebacking over the course of at least, recent memory. And, maybe in some of those teams, their entire history was sort of built around that. And then I started looking at some of the names, within some of those teams, like Roquan Smith, obviously, is a terrific player for the Baltimore Ravens. But after him, there's a bunch of guys where I'm like, I don't really even know these guys. It seems like even with Pittsburgh, like you go, Patrick Queen, who came over, ironically, from Baltimore. And then you start to look at, well, what else do they have? And the names don't really jump off the page at you as like, oh, yeah, that's a household name. And it started me into thinking that maybe this linebacking position might be right now in the NFL one of those positions that's sort of been, I don't know, marginalized is maybe the right word for it or wrong. I don't know. I'm not great with words, but I'm like thinking like when it comes to defense, it's the defensive front, and there's so much attention paid to the passing game, that, teams are playing 5 defensive backs most times, and maybe 2 linebackers are on the field. So I kind of think like the whole, nickel dime packages, sub packages rule the roost really when it comes to playing defense in the NFL, that the traditional linebacking core that we, kind of got used to for a long time, I don't think it's not the same anymore. And maybe that's just how it's sort of pushed the Eagles up the food chain because, A, they won the Super Bowl. Zach Bond was an absolute beast and an incredible find by Howie Roseman and the Eagles scouts when, starting to look at free agents. He was, an unheralded guy with the New Orleans Saints, and all of a sudden he finds the Eagles and a defensive coordinator that really just saw him. He had like visions when he's watching him on film. Man, boy, I can do the X, Y, and Z with this guy, and turned him into a Pro Bowler and a star. Mm-hmm. And then you look at what they drafted in the first round. Jihad Campbell, a guy that starred at Alabama, at the linebacking position, and you start to think like, really, who else is really better than them right now? If Jihad Campbell plays early enough in the season and plays up to his expectation, if you will, which is a first-round pick who happened to fall a little bit in the draft, maybe because of an injury, you start to think like, yeah, the linebackers are pretty good.
Well, yeah, and I think
we're not used to it.
Yeah, no, not at all. And look, we've said throughout the offseason, first it was Saquon getting paid, then it was Zach Bond getting paid, and it was like we had to wrap our heads around this version of how the salary cap is being spread out on the Eagles, because we're not used to seeing that much money taken up at the running back spot. We're not used to seeing that much money taken up. We're used to getting 3 linebackers for the price of Zach Bond. Probably less. You know what I mean? Like bargain discount shopping as far as that. Literally, you go back to the Alex Singleton contract with Denver and the Trent Edwards deal that he signed with, or TJ Edwards deal that he signed with the Bears.
Chicago?
Yeah. And you're like, you couldn't afford that?
Right.
And now they're paying Zach Bond this amount of money. Well, that goes to the influence of obviously Vic Fangio.
Right.
But again, we're not used to the money being allocated the way it's being allocated. So to take it another step here, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're not used to. We didn't grow up in, this is dime, this is nickel. You're going to have a nickel corner specifically, or nickel is nickel, as Vic Fangio likes to say. We're not used to that. Mm-hmm. But now a linebacking core doesn't mean you have 3 Pro Bowlers lurking in a 4-3 or 4 and a 4-3, obviously. But you just need one. One is half of the core. And their one was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate and an All-Pro in Zach Bond. So even with that, taking that into consideration, when you do look at some of those franchises that are just historically great at the linebacker position, you mentioned the Ravens, you mentioned the Steelers, who would be competing there? Well, if you're looking at linebackers, you're looking at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, for instance, in Detroit coming back, and you're also looking at that one guy really being dominant for them. So you only need one, and then maybe somebody else that shows promise and has played well. Nakobe Dean showed promise last year. Wasn't an All-Pro, wasn't Zach Bond, I get, but showed promise last year. He's hurt. Jihad Campbell is expected to come in and compete for that spot with Nakobe Dean. Both haven't played since really Jihad Campbell at all, coming in out of college as a rookie, and Nakobe Dean missed the playoffs last year due to injury. So, look, I want to see stuff from Pro Football Focus and have it increase my optimism and increase the positivity from the fan base. Go, oh, look, this is what they got the best linebacking core. But I got to say, that's really nice. Thank you, Pro Football Focus. We appreciate the kindness. But Nakobe Dean can't stay healthy, and Jihad Campbell hasn't stepped foot on the football field just yet. So are they including edge rushers in this? Are they looking at Josh Uche coming in here as a veteran who has had one great year? Are they looking at Azeez Ojulari, who has showed great talent but can't stay healthy? Are they including Jalix Hunt in all this? Like, if you're talking about edge rushers and linebackers, then I can see it a little bit with the experience that's going to be coming in here. But they either haven't proven it yet, or they haven't stayed healthy long enough yet. So if I'm looking at this as the Eagles, first off, I doubt they're even looking at it. But if I'm looking at this as an Eagles fan, I'll say it like that, then I'm going, yeah, that's nice, but I still think they're far away. To me, it's more of an indictment of the linebacking position, as you were saying, around the league than it is necessarily praising the Eagles as a group.
That's sort of the way, I looked at it, because I'm like, it puzzled me because, A, we're not used to that, and I know Zach Baun's terrific, but you're buying a future in Jahad Campbell, who you're just saying is going to be really good right away. And, he may be great, but it may take him a little while to sort of work his way into the position as a pro. I think it's more the latter. Like, you just look around the league, and much love to my Berks County brethren, Alex Anzalone with the Detroit Lions, who played high school football at Wyomissing for the Spartans, and then with the Florida Gators. He's a nice player, but when you start looking at Detroit and thinking like, wow, he's the big representative of a linebacker for the team that finishes number 2, I'm wondering what metrics. I know they come up with all these formulas and these metrics and PFF. What do they call them? Like PFF. Overall grades, and they come up with numbers like 90.2, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. If I got a 90.2 in high school or in college on a test, I'd feel pretty darn good about it. So I guess that's good. I just think it's more of an indictment of just the position in general. And I don't think they utilized our edge rushers in this linebacking position. I can't, when they come up with the other names that are mentioned are Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Smile Mondon, who has yet to play it down in the NFL. Another guy who I believe was drafted in the 5th round, who you're saying, okay, you're buying a future there too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I love these lists though, because this is great. This is list time. It depends on how much weight you want to put to it. It's funny because Eagle fans will see like, oh, so and so Sporting News or whoever comes out with the list ripped us, and they only graded our X unit 9th in the league. How dare they? But then when they come out with one that it gives you a first, you question it.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, but it really, yes. Because I looked at it and I went, wait, hold on. Who's incorporated in all this? Like, who do I count? Like, it's one of those things. Like, it's such a fragile grade that I'm like, even if you re-sign Oren Burks and they have this grade, I go, well, yeah, he played in the playoffs, played well. There was no drop off. Yeah. On special teams, forced the fumble that we talked about last week against the Green Bay Packers, and on special teams, like I said, to open things up. That's great. Okay, I can see it. You got some depth there. And Nakobe Dean comes back healthy, then yeah, I could absolutely see it. I don't see it. You really gotta break it down to how often this team plays. I think it was 170 snaps total that they played in like a base 4-3,
right?
2 deep safety, 2 corners type defense, where your linebackers really out there in somewhat of a normal fashion, I guess. But even then, I'm like, this isn't this is not your prototypical 4-3 defense. This is a very different thing that we're getting used to watching under Vic Fangio. Even what we were told about Jonathan Gannon or Sean Desai about the disciples of Vic Fangio, it still seemed far different. I mean, you didn't blitz at all. Like, you didn't compare to Jonathan Gannon or Sean Desai. You did not blitz at all. There was a slight uptick with Desai to Gannon in terms of blitz percentage, but nothing close to dramatic. If anything, it was a percentage point or 2 higher than what it was under Gannon. So that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I look at the linebacker spot and I say, okay, thank you for the compliment.
Right.
Still a lot of room to work here with the Eagles. Now, again, if you have somebody playing as high as a level as Zach Baun, they're looking at one marquee guy and saying that he could carry the unit. And then there's some question marks surrounding them. When you talk about buying a future, that's what I think the Eagles are also doing right now. So you could also look at this being a very interesting concept for Pro Football Focus to look at and say, all right, well, look, we understand what they did in the offseason. They didn't bring back Oren Burks. They're still betting on Nakobe Dean. Either Nakobe Dean or Jahad Campbell is going to work out well playing next to someone like Zach Baun. He's going to make that a lot easier, much like we're about to talk about with the defensive line, somebody coming in trying to take over for Milton Williams. It's going to be a little bit easier to do that when you're playing next to Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
So I think they're looking at it very similarly, where the height of one player's talent and ability kind of raises everything. The high tide raises all ships, so to speak, when looking at the linebacker group. But I still look at it and go, that's a number 1 spot.
Yeah.
That's more of a knock on the rest of the league than it is anything else.
That's sort of the way I look at it, just the position in general, how it has sort of evolved or devolved depending on the way you look at it. But it's funny you bring up Oren Burks because his name is highlighted in the number 15 team Cincinnati Bengals linebacking core, where it says the Bengals also picked up a quality third option in former Eagle Oren Burks. So now he's a quality third option.
Backhanded compliment, I guess, for the Eagles. They're super prepared.
Right.
If that guy's good enough to elevate them to 15,
right?
What could he have done here?
Easily makes it a 1.
No, now I'm understanding the metrics.
There you go.
Now I'm all right. It is funny. We do look at it, and this is why I always take it as famously everyone always says with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Like, look, they're playing fantasy sports here. That's what Pro Football Focus is doing. They're grading everyone individually, but this is a group setting, which does make it a little bit different. Normally, I take it with a grain of salt. This, I go, they're evaluating one player is what they're doing. They're evaluating which is great because that means the Eagles got the best guy. If he's good enough to elevate this core,
Right. Now, let's focus on that guy for a second because we're all, and PFF is doing the same thing, banking on the fact that Zach Baun is going to have another one of these terrific years like he did. What if last year was just a career year for a guy, who was healthy, throughout and maybe can't sort of raise it beyond that or maybe even, come back to having that great of a year? Because then when you start looking at it in that, frame, Jahad Campbell had better be darn good, and Nakobe Dean had better come back healthy at some point pretty early on and be able to really, raise that level. We're sort of, it's funny, a guy has a career year, okay? You're automatically, as a fan, saying, well, that's going to continue.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we've seen it many times with other players on other teams where it doesn't continue.
The difference that I make or acknowledge for Zach Baun is that he was absolutely playing out of position.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were to tell me that there was a safety that sucked somewhere else and could barely see the field, but then the Eagles say, well, that's because he's not a safety, he's a corner, and then all of a sudden he plays all out and is amazing at corner, well, then I think he's going to be a lot better at that position for the foreseeable future. It's not just that, he's been playing the same position and he was bad, then had one great year out of a fluke. Zach Baun was playing out of position with the New Orleans Saints. And Vic Fangio, the tape you talked about a second ago, watched him on tape and go, oh, no, that looks more like an inside guy than an outside guy. And he flourished. So for me, you're talking about a guy that's been playing out of position. Now he's playing in position, and this is what he's capable of. That's why I don't think it's the same comparison as, look at a guy that has one great year and then signs in the offseason with some other team at huge money.
Right.
Well, he's being asked to play the same position, but had a fluke great year all of a sudden. Zach Baun, everything changed for him. And it even caught him by surprise because even in the same story that Vic Fangio was telling about noticing what made him an inside guy, the same story, he said that Zach Baun even asked him, okay, hey, this is great, but when do I go back to the outside? And Vic Fangio just said, well, we'll get there. And they never did because this was the new position. And Zach Baun realized this shoe fit really well. And he just stayed with it and became an all-pro. So for me, when people bring that up, and I understand why the question comes up, he's being asked to do something totally different. If a guy has not had success in one position and then all of a sudden switches and is at an all-pro level, a defensive player of the year candidate level, to say that again, then that means he'd been playing out of position the whole time. And maybe the Saints never cracked that code, but Vic Fangio did.
Okay. Well, that's what we're banking on.
Oh, yeah. But I mean,
really.
It makes sense. I mean, that's not like a official wish type of scenario.
No.
Right? That makes sense.
Absolutely. But you start looking at that in that respect. You got a player like that on the defensive front. I know we're going to get to the defensive line here in a second. In Jalen Carter, you're going to put Zach Baun in there at the linebacking position. And then when you look at the defensive side, you really got two of them. Mm-hmm. The two young corners. So when you look at four players like that at those three different position levels on your defense that are pretty much playing at all-time levels when it comes to at least the NFC is concerned, that's going to carry the defense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And really how everybody helps everybody on this defense. Everyone kind of feeds off one another.
Mhm.
And we'll also get into this in a second here when we come back. The age-old question about the D-line helping the corners helping the D-line. Well, there's one guy at the heart of it all on the front line that I think is making this a lot easier for everybody else. And I think it's another reason you could believe in whoever is at linebacker this year playing next to Zach Bond. It's a reason to believe that they're going to have a lot easier of a go of it than some other players. We'll talk about that when we return. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. And let me tell you about the incredible people at FanDuel. You guys taking advantage of all FanDuel has to offer. FanDuel is where it's at when it comes to betting on games and making the action even more exciting. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already in on the action. Why not make it a little bit more exciting while your friends are getting burned on the beach? Sunburned on the beach? Get in the action with FanDuel. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use. The payouts are fast. You love that. Makes every regular season game feel more exciting and like a must-watch event. Same game parlays, watching a bet right in the ninth inning. What could be more exciting than that? And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com.
Now, talking about sunburned on the beach just made me think, like, how often do you visit the shore during the summer? Like, you spend a week down there, or weekends?
Maybe
what
once.
Do you do? Once.
Maybe once for at most 2 days.
2 days. Okay.
I'm not a beach guy.
Okay. Neither am I, really. I get bored. I get too bored.
Yeah,
okay.
My wife knows. My wife knows. We go to the beach. We sit there. You got 2 hours. That's okay. until the wheels start moving. I gotta do something. I gotta go get a slice of pizza. I gotta go get ice cream. I gotta throw the ball around. Whatever. That's all you got.
Yeah, I pretty much have to walk. Like that's basically all I do on the. I can't just sit there for hours on end. I don't have the patience for it. Much like you, it sounds like. But when you do the beach for the 2 hours, do you wear a lid or do you put 50 or 100? What do you do with the dome on the beach for 2 hours?
The dome on the beach. Now, I know these things have been outlawed in some areas, and I don't know if you know me well enough yet, Harry. I'm a bit of a rebel. Okay. I like the cool cabana. You know the cool cabana? You know those things?
Well,
you know what
like
those are.
They're
like cabanas. Yeah, it's like an umbrella, but it's got I almost called them tassels. They have like columns in each corner.
Oh, okay.
Offer no support, but you put sand in them, and it really, and this is why they're outlawed in so many areas, because they take up space, and I like that. I like having the space, right?
Well, right.
I don't want to be on, everyone on top of each other, and I feel like a sultan just sitting up there, But that's nice. I enjoy that, and that protects the dome.
Okay.
But it's a big argument with my wife and I because my skin is more friendly with the sun.
Okay.
My wife and my son are more of the fair complexion.
You have a more olive hue.
I have more of an olive hue, yes.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go so far as to say olive skin. I am half Polish. But I have the olive hue is a great way to put it. I'll use that now with my mom. But my wife and my son are more fair skinned. My daughter and I are a little bit more friendly with the sun, with the rays. So I like it like an SPF 15 at most.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at most. All right.
That's
normally
risky.
I am wearing a cap.
Okay, yeah. Because whenever I go out to play golf, it's 50 on the back of the neck and the arms, and so I go 50.
You're a 50 guy?
Yeah, you're just out there for 4 hours.
You're a long time.
3.5, 4 hours. A lot of exposure.
I will say, in the Italian American community, I'll golf with my dad and like his cousins, and it is looked down upon to have the sunscreen.
It's scoffed on. Like,
it is literally scoffed at.
Right,
Got my cousin Greg. Oh my God, sunscreen. It's built in.
Yeah, right.
Literally, it's built in to his epidermis. The sunscreen is built. Look at it, just because
I can see that though. I could hear that. Yeah.
Grandparents.
Your kid. He's got too much of that Polish blood in him. Yeah, he's got to go with the 15.
That's Eleanor. That's Eleanor doing it to him.
There you go.
All right.
That's great stuff.
I was trying to think of a protection segue into talking about the defensive line.
For the defensive front, yeah.
There's nothing there. So defensive line.
Yes.
Ranked the second best defensive line in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. Now, so we've said everything about Pro Football Focus, about what they do and all that. This is a really interesting one to me because it anchors around, obviously, Jalen Carter.
Yep.
It sets more expectations for Jordan Davis. And then at the same time, it also sets an expectation that I'm looking at with Moro Ojomo and the rookie Ty Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about Ty Robinson. I think two guys that are under the radar for this coming season that could be household names by the end of the year. Drew Kendall at the right guard spot and our man Louis DiBiase. By the way, Louis and Jason both needed the day off today, unfortunately. Holiday week, we got a lot going on. Everyone's got a lot going on, so all that's going on. But Drew Kendall, I know Louis DiBiase has been talking about him potentially taking over the right guard spot. And if you're the Eagles and you're looking at Tyler Steen or resetting the clock more or less on your starting right guard and when his contract would be due, Drew Kendall would certainly be alluring in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the defensive side of the ball, Ty Robinson, once I heard Jalen Carter talking about how Ty Robinson can wreak havoc on a offensive line and is a great guy to play next to, and he's a monster, he's a beast, and all that, I went, okay, all right, now this guy has my attention. And already in terms of something that's a little bit more tangible, we've seen Moro Ojomo play. We've seen flashes of a guy that can get through an offensive line and make the quarterback speed up his clock. So I see the pieces there a lot more than I see the pieces with the linebacking core. But the Eagles' defensive line, the second best defensive line unit in the NFL, Harry, according to PFF.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that they put Pittsburgh at number one because T.J. Watt is in a contract dispute.
Questionable.
With the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. So you take T.J. Watt off of that unit, where do they fall to? But, yeah, the Eagles, it starts and ends with Jalen Carter. And you brought up some other names that are going to figure in making some big plays in that divisional round game against the Rams. I mean, Ojomo, Jalix Hunt made some big plays along with Jalen Carter. But it all revolves around him. But if you get, like Nolan Smith made a big play in that game too. Sack with a forced fumble, I believe, that we're going to end up talking about. Nolan Smith had a terrific, 2/3 of the year. Took him a little while to get going, but once he got going, man, he was basically a fixture, behind the line of scrimmage and wreaking havoc, tackles for loss, sacks, you name it. I anticipate him. I know we talk about, it's not everything's linear, but I am really looking forward to a big year from Nolan Smith. And Jalix Hunt is an interesting character on this defense to me. He's got ability, just like Ojomo. They're just sort of these guys where you're like, they're second-tier guys, but they're really capable of making big plays. And I think they make those big plays because of what happens in the center. With Jalen Carter. I think it must be a total joy to play on a defensive front with a player like that, who I know only came up, fourth in their rankings, PFF's rankings, amongst interior defenders. I need to see the grades for the other three guys ahead of him because, and maybe I'm just too dialed into it because I watch every game to do the postcast here on Locked On, but man, this guy showed up every week. And he was on the field making an impact basically on every series of downs, and that's Jalen Carter.
I can't help but to go back to the phrase kingmaker.
Yeah.
It's like, who's the next guy that they're going to churn out playing next to Jalen Carter that's going to look like a stud? And I very much doubt, though, that anyone's going to get it better than Milton Williams, who not only got a big contract because he played next to Jalen Carter, that already really upped his game, but he also improved. I don't want to take that away from him. He did improve greatly, but it was made easier by Jalen Carter, but also was able to get a bidding war between the Panthers and the Patriots in the offseason to make sure that he got that top dollar. So I find that fascinating for him. But if you're Jordan Davis and you supposedly had fallen in love with the Peloton and that helped you get at least the rookie extension for the upcoming season, that's great. What can you do now that you're in better shape, or going to stay in better shape, and you're still playing next to Jalen Carter? Is the true measure of him taking a step forward just production on the field or availability on the field? for me, his snap count going down last year isn't the end-all, be-all, because he's a guy that's only playing out there for 3 downs or 2 downs. If you get into a 3rd and long, he's not going out there on the football field. Somebody else is going to go out there. So it shows even more that maybe he won on 1st and 2nd down, so he doesn't need to be out there on 3rd down. So my thing would be, well, advance your game then. What's the next step to making you better? Well, the more you're out, if you're a good football player and a versatile football player, you're going to be out there on the football field a lot. We learned that with Jalen Carter even last year, him taking a step forward on his own. Jordan Davis doing something similar would certainly turn a lot of people's heads in Philadelphia and make them pay a lot more attention to what he's doing and not so much what Jalen Carter's providing for him on the football field. So him getting a bit of a snap count increase, I think would still be a very good thing because I want his job, his responsibilities to expand in the upcoming year. But if you're Moro Ojomo and you're looking to take a huge leap, if you're Ty Robinson and you're looking to prove that not only do you belong in the NFL, but you can flourish in the NFL, you're going to be looking to get next to Jalen Carter as much as humanly possible in the upcoming season. Yeah. So if you're looking at kingmakers, you could be talking about, look, I don't want to put this pressure on the guy, but, you're looking at the possible defensive rookie of the year guys when you talk about Jahad Campbell coming back, playing healthy, knowing that the guy that's in front of him is Jalen Carter, getting into the backfield after the quarterback. That clock sped up in that way would be a fantastic thing for even an edge rusher, a linebacker. That would be also great for someone like Ty Robinson or Moro Ojomo looking to still prove. Because even though Moro Ojomo has shown us those flashes, he hasn't done it with any great consistency.
Right.
So you're still looking for that to be consistent in order to prove that, yes, I am absolutely not only NFL ready, but I could be a guy that can really change the outcome of a game by how I improve my own.
It's very interesting you say that because, like, if they get of the newcomers, Ojulari, Uche, and Robinson, one draft pick, a couple of free agent signings. If one of those guys out of those 3 really emerge, I think it's going to be. I don't think the defense skips a beat. If just one of those guys really, because I expect Nolan Smith to have a great year. I expect Jalen Carter to have a great year. I expect Jordan Davis to play some more snaps and to make more of an impact in a year that's very important for him for his financial future. Jalix Hunt's another guy that's very, very capable. But if they just get one of those 3 guys, I mentioned Ojulari, or Uche, or Robinson, to step forward, I think it's going to be a really good year for this defense. And I saw one of the guys on Vegas Insiders. I subscribe to that service just for insight on not just gambling, but just, the ideas about players around the leagues. And there's a guy that works for them. I think he's an Eagle fan. I think he's from this area. Sean Green is his name. I don't know if you know who he is. I don't know him personally. But he might be blinded by Eagle Green, but he says Nolan Smith, he's taken a future out on him on Defensive Player of the Year.
Wow.
Now think about that.
Wow.
Yes.
All right. So let's live in that world for a second. I'm renting in this world. I'm not buying.
Right.
In this world. So Nolan Smith, you mentioned the 3 quarters of the season, he was great. So there were 2 giant leaps from Nolan Smith's game last year. After the bye week and after Brandon Graham went down.
Mm-hmm.
If he's got one more of those types of leaps, and those were leaps, those were Superman leaps, okay, over a building in a single leap.
Right.
That's what Nolan Smith did last year. If he's got one more of them in him, yeah, we could talk about that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Especially because if Jalen Carter's taking up double teams in the middle of the line of scrimmage, again, it all goes back to Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Then Nolan Smith going to get them sexy numbers. Nolan Smith going to get them sexy sack numbers. And that is something that will turn a lot of heads for the people voting on Defensive Player of the Year. That'll get a lot of attention. So to live in that world for a second, to rent, to not buy, to have an Airbnb, Harry, in that area for a second, that's how it would happen, in my opinion. And
yeah,
I mean, it's I still think unlikely, but I don't think it's absolutely bonkers crazy.
It's fun to think about for a few minutes.
There you go.
In July, you know what I mean? That's
exactly.
all. That's all
exactly.
it is.
Exactly. All right. Real quick, when we come back, I want to revert back to a word that we talked about last week because you kind of just described it about not skipping a beat. We'll talk about that when we return with this Eagles team. And also, we'll start our rewind. Harry, I know you got to make an early exit, but I also want to get your take on the Eagles Rams game in the postseason last year. We'll be back after this on Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. And just like that, we're back. Now, last week, Harry, we talked about an uplifting word. And I feel that the uplifting word, and it was put out there by Fox Sports, is reloaded.
Mm-hmm.
The Philadelphia Eagles have reloaded. They have not retooled. They have not rebuilt, but they have reloaded from their Super Bowl championship season from a year ago. I love that word. And last week I talked about the reason I love it. I love it because any of the other re's of rebuild or retooled, that just means you're done. Like you're grasping at straws, nice try. But reloaded means you got the same weapon, firing on all cylinders. You just put in the different clip, the different magazine.
Right.
You just reloaded, but the same dominant machine, the same dominant weapon. That makes me feel a lot better. And when you look at these numbers or these rankings here by Pro Football Focus, the most question marks that easily to be acknowledged are on the defensive side of the football.
No question. Yeah.
So to say that they just reloaded, that means that Jahad Campbell or Nakobe Dean, they're going to be great. They're going to be great playing behind Jalen Carter and playing next to Zach Bond. That's great. Jalix Hunt is going to take a bigger step up and maybe give you the production that Brandon Graham gave you last year. Nolan Smith is going to move into more of that maybe Hassan Reddick type role in the absolute perfect world. Not Defensive Player of the Year, but there's a chance that he has a huge upswing from last year. Maybe he replaces Josh Sweat's numbers at least of 8.5 sacks, 9.5 sacks, that type of school of last year. These rankings at least make me feel a lot better about that. And, oh, by the way, I know we're still questioning what could be at the safety position next to Reed Blankenship, but Reed Blankenship's still pretty damn good.
He's pretty good.
Quenya Mitchell is pretty damn good. Cooper DeJean, whatever role they have him in, he's going to excel. And I think you still got a win-win with Adoree Jackson, Keely Ringo, and Cooper DeJean playing on the outside in limited reps. So, yeah, defensively speaking, I think reloaded is the perfect way. But to your point, not skipping a beat wouldn't shock me in the upcoming season, Harry.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and I think PFF just put out another one with regard to receivers where they have the Eagles at number 1.
There you go.
We'll probably talk about that in our next episode. But, you start looking at where this team is. The offensive side of the football, obviously you feel very good. Forget about injuries. Injuries are notwithstanding, like that's something that could screw up any team. But when you just look at turning the page, oh yeah, totally good with everything there. Even the right guard, I'm good with Tyler Steen. I think he's going to have a terrific year simply because of who plays to his left and who plays to his right, and the skill at the running back position that running behind him. But when you look at the defense, that was where you could sort of poke some holes because you had some losses. And every team that wins a Super Bowl is going to lose some players. It just happens. You can't bring everybody back. But with the way this team has built through the draft and developed guys, there's a trust level there now that I don't know that there was back when this team went to the Super Bowl for the 2017 season. There wasn't that trust level there back then. That's been built since that, since those years over these last 2 or 3, 4 years in the draft where you just trust that they're going to go and find the next guy, find the next position group to develop. And I think that, going into a season that's, as a fan, it's got to make you feel great.
Oh, absolutely. Before you got to get running, and I do want to throw it out there to the audience as well. This is a live show, so we are taking comments. We are taking questions. If you guys want to get them in the comment section, go for it. But Harry, we are going to be focusing on 2 things. Well, one, I do want to ask you this. The greatest threat to the Eagles in the NFC, who do you see right now as the greatest threat to the Eagles coming out of the NFC?
Well, I don't think it's anybody in the division. I think the Commanders are good. I like what they've done with the offensive line. It's the smart thing to do to build protection around their young quarterback who, they obviously hope is there for a decade plus and could be a superstar in this league. The Dallas Cowboys, they've added some players, Pickens, they added Devontae Williams. It really all comes down to how does Dak return? Does Dak have a great year? Because their defense got some players, but I think both the Cowboys and the Commanders are both teams that are in situations where they're going to have to outscore you. They're not going to be able to really rely on their defense like the Eagles may be, to win football games, where holding teams, in the teens and having sort of those pedestrian games out of Jalen Hurts, maybe where Saquon Barkley doesn't have hit a couple of home runs, but they still find ways to win it because their defense is just that good. I don't see that out of those other two teams in the division. So I'm going to have to look to the NFC North and the Detroit Lions. I just think that team, they had some injuries last year. They still found a way to hold down home field, but really weren't a dominant home field team, obviously, because the Commanders came in there and had their way with them offensively. But I think that a good bounce back year out of Detroit. I still think that they're a good team, and the team out in the West, and I know you're high on this team. Some people aren't. Some people think it's going to be the Niners again. I think the Rams are the class of the Western Division.
I agree.
I really do. And as long as they can keep their quarterback healthy, I like what they can do on offense with their receivers and just that coach too. The coach is so good. And defensively, I think they have a lot of young guys that are going to be, coming into their own in their second and third year on that team as this team sort of redefines their defense beyond the Aaron Donald era.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the Rams and the Lions.
Yeah, I think so too. I think those are two great ones. Those are the top candidates in my mind as well. As far as that Rams playoff game, real quick, I know you got to run, but what's the first thing that jumps to mind when you think about that Rams playoff game?
Well, the weather. That was number one. You're looking here at a team from Southern California. Obviously, this is why you love having an outdoor stadium in the Northeast. When you have a football team that plays in January, I know it's more comfortable for everybody to go to a dome, but damn it, man, it takes away from your home field advantage. And we saw that really at play. With that playoff game, with the sleet, the rain, the snow, it was just winter on display in Philadelphia in late January. The other thing that sticks out to me is the 3 home runs that were hit. Right out of the gate, your quarterback hit you a home run with a big 44-yard run on the 6th play of the game for a touchdown and got you out to the lead. For the majority of the whole season, we were waiting for this team to show up in the first quarter and score some damn points, score some touchdowns. It took a while until it actually happened. But they hit you for a big one in the first quarter in this game. And then a couple of series later, you got another one from Saquon Barkley. He actually hit 2 in the game, 2 homers, one from 62 yards over the right side over Lane Johnson to get you a touchdown. The kicker missed an extra point, and he missed another extra point. That was one of the things that really kept the Rams kind of in this game until the very end of the game, where they went on a long drive, and Jalen Carter came up with a huge sack on 3rd and 2. At the Eagles' 13-yard line, which forced them into a 4th and 11. They ended up missing on the play, and the game was over. But you saw guys on your defense make big sacks, force fumbles in big spots in that second half that really elevated this team. Your 2 big stars on offense hit home runs, and they survived a bad day for the kicker in bad weather and got you to the NFC Championship. To me, that's that game in a nutshell.
I think you hit on all the big ones there. There's one play in this game that I thought encapsulated the entire season to Jalen Hurts and his approach to the game. I'll talk about that when I get back. Harry, appreciate you, brother. I know you got to do some running around. I know we'll catch up hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah, when are we doing our next one? We got to tell.
I think it's tomorrow.
Do we even know? Do our 2 other guys even know?
I think we're shooting for tomorrow at noon. I think that's the goal.
Okay, well, I can do noon. I can tell you that. I might need one of these Find My iPhones for our 2 compatriots here on the. I need to have put a tag underneath Jason's skin on one of his shoulders just to find out where he is. That would help.
We're gonna air tag
him.
The co-host.
Is that what you call it? Is that what you call it?
Air tag the co-host. Yeah.
Okay, I'm for that.
casually walk by, drop it in their pocket. You're good to go. That's all you do.
Yeah.
Harry, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. That's Harry Mays, ladies and gentlemen. This is Locked On Eagle Squad podcast. I'll be back right after this to take questions and comments coming up. And also, I'm going to jump into about this one particular play in that Rams game that was absolutely crazy. Get to that and more when we return. This is Locked On Eagle Squad podcast. It's very simple, folks. Very simple. This was a wild game as we go into our 2024 season that was Rewind. We did the wild card round against the Green Bay Packers last week. This week, we have on our target the Locked On Eagles Rewind 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, LA Rams, divisional round of the postseason. Now, the way this game ended, it left a lot of people saying, oh, the Rams, if they just had great weather, then blah, 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 blah. Well, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike, okay? So I don't care about what the weather was doing and how it affected the Rams. The fact was both teams had to play in it. The Eagles had not played in a bunch of snow all season long, so it's not like it was just the North Pole here in Philadelphia throughout the season. So, yes, the snow is certainly a factor. And I can remember having conversations with people about the impact of weather on the game as far as viewership and how amazing it is. It always takes the game to a new level. But we had the Saquon watch this. We had the Saquon huge run in the snow on the check down from Jalen Hurts. And really, it felt like for a long time that this game was going to be, in essence, a blowout, that the Eagles were going to be in control. And there's one play in particular that really, I thought, encapsulated Jalen Hurts' entire season. Going into this past year, 2024, I had said that going into week one, there had never been more pressure on a week one than there was on the Philadelphia Eagles going into Brazil against the Packers. Had nothing to do with the Packers, had nothing to do with Brazil, had everything to do with just the Philadelphia Eagles and the way they walked off the football field the previous year. You were worried about coaching mistakes. You still have the same head coach in Nick Sirianni, albeit you had a new coaching staff around him with Vic Fangio and obviously Kellen Moore on the offensive side. But still, this was Nick Sirianni's football team. The turnovers of Jalen Hurts, even me as a huge Jalen Hurts supporter, could he get rid of those turnovers? Well, finally, after the bye week, they got rid of those turnovers. Now, how did they do it? Well, Jalen Hurts stopped putting the precious pigskin in peril. Wasn't trying to thread the needle, but most importantly, he was making good decisions. He wasn't trying to do too much. He wasn't playing hero ball. The beginning of the end for the Carson Wentz era, truly in Philadelphia, didn't really have much to do with him blowing out his ACL in LA the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. It had to do with the idea that Carson Wentz had to take everything on his own shoulders to show everyone else that he could be the winner. And even if everybody else around him was struggling, he was going to be great and he was going to prove it. That led to interceptions, that led to turnovers, that led to more injuries for Carson Wentz. That was the end of it. I did not want to see the same thing happen with Jalen Hurts, even though, especially because he had talent around him at the wide receiver positions. So I didn't want to see that happen to Jalen Hurts. At the end of 2023, you started to see that with Jalen Hurts. You started to see those struggles. You started to see him play hero ball. You started to see him do it again this year. Interception, middle of the end zone, Jair Alexander against the Packers, stupid. First interception he threw against the Packers in the first possession of the season, stupid. Winding up with Levante David right before the bye week in Tampa, winding up knowing that he was right behind him, forcing the fumble, sack fumble, that was stupid. After the bye week, Jalen Hurts made a conscious effort to trust his run game and not try to make the extreme play, not play hero ball. So what does this have to do with the game against the Rams in the divisional round of the playoffs? If you remember, the Rams started to eke their way back into this game. Now, it was never a blowout by any means. You're talking about at the end of the first quarter, the Eagles are up 13-7. They go into halftime. They're up at that point, 13-10 at the end of the first half. But there was one particular play with Jalen Hurts in that second half, third quarter, at the end of that third quarter. The Eagles were up 16-13. And if you remember this play, this was talked about a lot. They have the ball on the 20-yard line. The 8-yard line. It's a 2nd and 6. For some reason, after Saquon Barkley was given the ball and he goes up the middle for 4 yards, to make it a 2nd and 6. They drop back to pass with Jalen Hurts in the shotgun. The play call and design made no sense to me at the moment. But if you remember, Jalen Hurts had Dallas Goedert streaking across the middle of the field. Could he have just buried it in between the guards, for instance? You had on this play, if you remember, some problems with your offensive line. Blitz wasn't picked up on the edge. You had a streaking linebacker coming at you. If he just buries the ball in the middle of the field with Dallas Goedert crossing there, and Jalen Hurts knows he's going to have Dallas Goedert crossing there, he just buries the ball at the feet there. You're talking about living to play another day. You're not talking about intentional grounding in the end zone. It wouldn't be intentional grounding because the receiver was right there. So instead of doing that, Jalen Hurts did what I felt he really did throughout the season, especially after the bye week, which was just not put it in peril. Even to the point of taking a safety like he did in that situation. He'd rather take the safety than throw an interception or fumble the ball for a touchdown. I'll give him 2 instead of 6 or 7. Or I'll give him the ball at the 13-yard line if a ball gets intercepted because of a bad throw. He just ate it. And it looked terrible. But in hindsight, when you look back on how he approached the game after the bye week, this is exactly what Jalen Hurts would do. Because nothing, people say nothing is worse than a turnover. Well, nothing is worse than a turnover in the red zone, which was essentially what was going to happen. Now, did he still give the ball to the Rams because of the safety? Yes, he did, but not in the red zone. Trusted his defense. So he trusts his defense. He takes the sack in the end zone, unfortunately. Goes right back to the Rams. Karen Williams ends up fumbling the football, trusting his defense. Jalen Carter forces the fumble. Isaiah Rodgers picks it up. Just like that. One simple play. Eagles are able to add a field goal onto it. So it goes from a 16-15 game, a 1-point game, to all of a sudden the Eagles are up 4. That's the one play that I really look back on in this game, outside of the obvious, the touchdown runs and Jalen Hurts' 44-yard touchdown run, Saquon Barkley breaking off touchdowns. That's the one play I really look at on the offensive side of things that makes me go, oh, wow, how about that? Jalen Carter coming up with the forced fumble. That's another great one. Jalen Carter coming up with a sack in that game. It's another one to focus on. It really is incredible to look back on that game for the Philadelphia Eagles and say, yeah, I know a lot of people are going to focus on the weather, but overall, what you saw from this defense was something special, and something special throughout. Jalen Carter, on that day, 2 sacks, 5 combo tackles, 3 solo, 2 tackles for loss, and 3 times he hit Matthew Stafford. I also think back on Jeremiah Trotter Sr.'s comments about Jalen Carter. This is the game I look at where you say, wow, this is a guy that's just going on raw talent. This is a guy that's going on raw talent and not even learning the full capabilities at the position of defensive tackle yet. What happens when he learns actual technique? What happens when he learns more than just power? You're going to be talking about an even more special player, and this is the game that really stands out to me. Because if the Eagles' defense doesn't step up and play nearly as well as they did in this game, Eagles don't win this game. They don't force the turnovers that they forced. You don't win this game. Yeah, absolutely. You can go back and look at Saquon Barkley and him rattling it off touchdowns, a 62-yard touchdown run. Jalen Hurts, 44-yard touchdown run. Saquon Barkley really putting the icing on the cake there in the fourth quarter to go up 28-15. This is all thanks to turnovers, creating this opportunity for the Eagles. And Saquon Barkley breaking off that 78-yard run to put the game out of reach, essentially, is what changed everything. Or, excuse me, what solidified the win. But defense just staying on point, especially through the first 3.5 quarters of football, and forcing those turnovers and getting sacks and speeding up the clock of Matthew Stafford, that's really what changed things for the Eagles. So when I look at this offseason, I talk about teams that are the most threatening to the Eagles. I got all the respect in the world when it comes to the Washington Commanders. But look, we've seen one-year wonders before at the quarterback position, and I think Jalen Daniels is better than that. But still got to do it again after the league has game plan for you. They've seen all the film on you. They know what you're capable of. They know how to scheme against you defensively. He's got to prove it. They've upped their game as far as the offensive line goes. Good for them. But it still comes down to the quarterback making the right reads, making the right plays. They got him Deebo Samuel out there. Another weapon. I don't fear the Commanders, especially when you talk about the only time the Commanders beat the Eagles with Jaden Daniels was when Kenny Pickett had to take over a quarterback, and they were still a Devontae Smith drop away. Just a Devontae Smith. A rare Devontae Smith drop away from beating the Commanders. The Dallas Cowboys, even if they scare you in the regular season, which I don't know too many people that would say they would, do they scare you in the postseason? No. That's Dak Prescott. Talking about Dak Prescott being healthy feels like talking about Joel Embiid being healthy at this point. Like, what are we talking about here? The guy has shown who he is. Can't rely on Dak Prescott. Do I think he's a talented quarterback? Absolutely. When he's playing, yes, he's a talented quarterback. But ultimately, when he's needed the most, he ain't there. And if we're comparing quarterbacks, I'm not taking anybody over Jalen Hurts in this division, and that goes without saying. So when I look outside this division, I know Harry mentioned the Lions, worthy of it, well-coached team. They got 2 new coordinators. I talk about they're losing Ragnow as their starting center. I've mentioned speeding up the clock a number of times on this show already today, whether it's at the gain for the Philadelphia Eagles or at the detriment. Well, this is at the detriment of the Detroit Lions if Jared Goff's clock is sped up because his starting center is not there. Especially one of the talent of Ragnow, for instance. So I look around and I think the 49ers will be a good team. Sure. The Seahawks are going through a bit of a rebuild there in Seattle. I look at the Rams, and I think Matthew Stafford is a very good quarterback. And I think Sean McVay is a very good head coach. Adding Devontae Adams to that offense, parting ways with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua really breaking out onto the scene last year. I think the Rams are going to be a team that we're going to have to keep an eye on in the NFC. And you talk about making it out of the NFC and who could be the NFC title matchup, Eagles-Washington, Eagles-Cowboys, Eagles-Lions, Eagles-Rams. That's something. That's something to really keep an eye on, I think, is the Rams outside of the NFC East. Vikings had a hell of a year last year. They're going to go through a transition here at quarterback. I had a conversation with a Vikings fan recently about a reason for them to be optimistic. If you're looking at McCarthy, for instance, coming in, taking over for a guy like Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold failed everywhere but Minnesota. So that makes you feel like if you have a young quarterback that at least knows how to throw a football with any accuracy and knows his playbook and knows how to find, yes, Justin Jefferson, then you're going to have a pretty damn good year. But not in my top 3 just yet. If I'm looking at outside the division, then yes, I look at the Lions and I look at the Rams. Lions, for me, defensively above everything else. The Rams certainly defensively hit on 2 rookies last year, no question about that. And Jared Verse, by the way, reversed course and offered some praise recently of Eagles fans. At least they do get in his head. At least we know that, despite what he has to say about him. But everything else, I look at the Rams, I look at the Lions, and I do look at the Commanders. Those are the squads that I'm focused on. If I had to put it in order, it'd be the Rams, the Lions, the Commanders. That's all I'm looking at in the NFC. 2 are in your own division. You've shown, or excuse me, 1 is in your own division. You've shown you can already handle them. The other you faced last year and beat them when it mattered most. And you also faced them in their home last year, and you beat them then too. Saquon ran all over them both times. So I don't have a lot of fear when it comes to those positions. We will be back with you guys tomorrow. At least Harry and I will be for a noon edition of Locked On Eagle Squad podcast. In the meantime, make sure you guys like and subscribe on the Locked On Eagle Squad podcast. My name is Marc Farzetta. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you then. Bye.